Do comments from Tuesday by the agent of Japanese superstar pitcher Roki Sasaki potentially put the Cardinals in play for a run at the talented free agent? What's going on, guys? Bonus b-schaeff daily coming your way. I said with winter meetings this week, likely bringing us a lot of topics and news to discuss, that we might be running multiple episodes a day. So we'll classify this one as b-schaeff daily as well, as we talk about the comments from Joel Wolfe, the agent of Roki Sasaki, the talented Japanese pitcher that has been posted and is expected to sign with an MLB team this winter. But what's interesting about Sasaki's free agency is that the winner of the bidding is not going to necessarily be just the team that can pay the highest dollar. Similar to when Shohei Ohtani came over from Japan, he was below the age of, I think it's 25, that is the cutoff, where you are subject to the international bonus spending limits. That's the situation, at least for Sasaki here. And it's going to mean that he's not going to get this massive payday. There are going to be other factors at play here for the team that is able to woo him and convince Roki Sasaki that that's the place he needs to be. And it's not just going to come down to money, because if you have an international spending budget, you can spend it on Sasaki this time around, but that's a very limited pool. There are going to be other aspects at play here. So interesting comments from Joel Wolfe as it pertains to that. He spoke to reporters at the winter meetings on Tuesday, and we're going to spend some time breaking down the comments and how maybe the Cardinals might actually be in play here, related to what the agent of Sasaki, Joel Wolfe, who's also Arenado's agent, it just so happens to be the case, but some of the things that he said about what Sasaki might be looking for, well, maybe the Cardinals could be interesting here. And if it's not one of those deals that's going to cost you a bunch of money, could the Cardinals try to put on the full court press and have some compelling arguments toward why Sasaki should pick St. Louis? We don't really know. It has not been reported necessarily that the Cardinals are making a play, not that I've seen anyway, but interesting. And if this was something the Cardinals would be looking to do, I think it would be in the shadows for sure. So we'll talk a little bit about what Joel Wolfe had to say and where we think Sasaki could end up based on that information. But want to thank our partners real quick before we get any further. Smith Agri-Service and Craft Revival LLC presenting b-schaeff daily this week throughout the winter meetings. And Smith Agri-Service is a family-owned independent retailer providing farmers in Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa with competitive pricing on Corteva, BASF, generic brand crop protection products, and Brevant corn and soybean seed. Scan the QR code on the YouTube screen there, or text 202-988-1106, or email smithag@irtc.net for more information. Then there's Craft Revival LLC, specializing in passionately restoring log cabins to their former glory by studying traditional woodworking practices of the past and utilizing them in our modern world to create genuine, timeless beauty. So if you have a vision for some work to be done on your log cabin or historic home and you cherish craftsmanship, give Craft Revival LLC a call today at 573-366-6563. Keeping craftsmanship alive one project at a time since 2021, Craft Revival LLC. So let's talk about the comments from Joel Wolfe today, the agent of Roki Sasaki, and as I mentioned, Arenado as well. Check out other videos on the channel where we're breaking down all of the happenings as it pertains to Arenado's trade market. Joel Wolfe had some things to say about the Arenado trade situation. We might touch on some of that in a future video, although it does kind of feel like we're beating the Arenado thing to death. It is the main thing going on with the Cardinals right now. But maybe this Sasaki thing could be something going on with the Cardinals. I'll say this off the top. I think it's unlikely that Sasaki would land with the Cardinals. I have thought for a while it's either going to be the Dodgers or the Padres, and the Dodgers obviously have the Yamamoto factor, the Ohtani factor. The Padres, of course, have Yu Darvish to sort of advocate for that team. If San Diego is interested in Sasaki, then Darvish is going to be a big player there to potentially help sway him. But some interesting notes. I'm seeing a lot of this reporting from The Athletic was there, obviously, to see what Joel Wolfe had to say down there in Dallas at the winter meetings. Joel Wolfe basically saying that he has not yet discussed Sasaki's preference regarding, do you want to play with other Japanese teammates? He said every player is different, and the quote was, I'm interested to see how he feels about whether he'd want to be the first or one of the first in a place that hasn't had a Japanese player in some time. So that one's kind of interesting, basically not saying that you got to have a connection, a Japanese connection necessarily, to be in play for Sasaki. At least that's not something that the agent and the player had discussed to this point in time. So we kind of make a lot of assumptions on what a player might be interested in, but everybody's different, and who knows whether that's going to be a factor, or maybe Sasaki is somebody that wants to sort of carve out his own niche and be a shining star from Japan for a franchise that doesn't necessarily already have that. Now, the Cardinals have an interesting situation with Lars Nootbaar, who is one of their prominent players. And Nootbaar, of course, his mother is Japanese, and he played on the Japanese national team in the World Baseball Classic alongside Sasaki. And that makes it a little bit interesting as to, okay, if that's something he's interested in and having a buddy or somebody that he knows on the team, then maybe Lars Nootbaar would be, obviously a name that he's got familiarity with. But that's sort of the back burner type of conversation, right? A lot of the other elements are, okay, is this going to be a guy that has to go to the West Coast? Because a lot of times we hear with players coming over from another country, they want to gravitate toward maybe a market that has a lot of similarities to where they're from. And a lot of times it seems as though the West Coast of the United States is given a lot of advantages there. It's just from a comfort factor. But Wolfe said Sasaki hasn't mentioned a desire specifically to play on the West Coast, because it is geographically closer to Japan. Obviously, just in terms of getting back home would be easier, fly from LA or San Diego to be able to fly to Japan, a little bit shorter there. But he said, quote, I think about 5 or 10 years ago that was something that maybe weighed a little bit more, but now you can fly direct from Japan to most of the major cities in the U.S. It's not really that much of an issue anymore. Not sure that's 100% the case. Like, I don't know if there's a direct to Japan from St. Louis, but that's neither here nor there. Basically, Joel Wolfe's comments implied it doesn't have to be West Coast. Right? So there are aspects of this that we may have assumed is just going to be the case that may not be the case. And one interesting aspect of this that has jumped up is the media element of this. Apparently in Japan, maybe Roki Sasaki didn't have such a great time with the media in Japan over his desire to leave the Nippon Professional Baseball League for MLB at such a young age. And Japanese culture, this is reading from the Athletic article, considered disrespectful. And as a result, Sasaki has maybe been subject to some things, including false rumors and accusations. Wolfe said a lot of people jumped on board there, creating some false rumors about him and his family. It was very detrimental to his mental state. So that's awful to hear about, that Sasaki has been going through that. But basically, the implication is because of that, Wolfe was asked if Sasaki would prefer a smaller market team versus perhaps a big market one, where maybe the media landscape is a little bit different. And here's his quote. Again, this is reading from The Athletic. I think there's an argument to be made that a smaller mid-market team might be more beneficial for him as a soft landing coming in from Japan, given what he's been through and not having an enjoyable experience with the media. It might be, I'm not saying it will be, I don't know how he's going to view it, but it might be beneficial for him to be in a smaller market. I really don't know how he looks at it yet because I haven't had a chance to really sit down and discuss it with him in great detail. So that's kind of interesting. Like, I think a lot of this is, remember, the agent is holding court there at the winter meetings. He's taking questions from reporters who are trying to get some information about this player. A lot of these answers are, I haven't really talked with him about it yet. So take it all, I think, with a little bit of a grain of salt. But the idea, and look, I think this is also a classic agent move where you say, no, it doesn't have to be the big market. No, it doesn't have to be the West Coast. Anybody could. Obviously, you don't want to limit yourself as the agent of the player to potentially take options off the table by saying, yep, he wants to go to the West Coast, because then why are other teams going to try? New York, Chicago, even big markets that don't exist on the West Coast might just say, we're out of the running. Like, it doesn't apply to us. Obviously, as the agent, you're never going to do that. So even though it may be true that he's not closing the doors on just being open to any possibility, that there might end up being some preferences that do align with West Coast, big market, the standard things we often hear players being interested in having. But if this aspect of, doesn't necessarily want to go into a media market that's as robust or as whatever you might perceive it to be, because I know a lot of folks in the YouTube comment section might say, the media here is terrible and you guys are all bad and you're homers or whatever it is that people think about us. But I do think it is kind of interesting that I guess there are certain markets that would jump out, like New York, Philly, where it's pretty rough and tumble potentially for a player that if you don't have that comfort and confidence with the way that the stuff in the media may be portrayed, you might want something a little more low-key. Now, I actually don't know if St. Louis is applicable here, because I think the quote was that he might be looking for something of a smaller media contingent, just not so many people to have to talk to as part of the consideration here. But again, this is just the agent kind of talking through things and saying, I haven't really asked him, the degree to which that's going to be a preference. But I mean, St. Louis media, I feel like will be welcoming to a player, so we'll do our part. It's just kind of funny to think about the quotes and the things that are being thrown out on social media and Twitter right now, and I could just hear the jokes that Cardinals fans could be making in their heads about different media around town. They'd say, yeah, St. Louis is a great place. The fans are great. The media great. You do have to look out for that short guy with the ridiculous hair. He refuses to get a haircut. It's a whole thing. Now he's got the mustache thing kind of going on. Nobody really knows why. I was already kind of bracing myself for something like that on Twitter, but I haven't seen anything to that effect yet, so I guess we'll see. But the plan for Sasaki is to basically meet with a number of teams, however many he's going to meet with, wants to meet with, who wants to meet with him, at a central location during the first round of meetings rather than him having to travel around to all the cities necessarily. They don't know yet how many meetings that's going to be, but there was more than half the league, according to Wolfe, that had scouted Sasaki in Japan. And I believe the Cardinals are among that group that did at least scout for this player. And so we'll kind of see what ends up happening there with the number of meetings. But then Sasaki planning to travel around the United States currently, will meet with teams before going home for Christmas, and then he'll come back in January. By that point, we'll have narrowed down the options, and then he'll probably travel to some of the cities for in-person meetings, be able to see where he would potentially be choosing to sign with. And then I think the dates, again, all of this courtesy of The Athletic, he would sign between the 15th and the 24th of January, Wolfe hoping that it'll be closer to the beginning of that timeline to handle everything with a visa and be ready to go for spring training. So that is all going to come to a head in January, but it sounds like over the next couple of weeks, there will be some in-person meetings that happen with teams at whatever location designated by Sasaki. So the teams will go to him, and then after Christmas, he'll come back to the United States and potentially head to some cities that are under consideration. So we'll see. According to Wolfe, quote, teams have already begun sending presentations both in video and PowerPoint, PDF form, that sort of thing. But we didn't give teams a hard deadline to submit that information because we want them to be able to put the time in it to do it right. Obviously, some teams were already working on these things, some of them for months, I believe. So, yeah, a lot of interest in Roki Sasaki. He was apparently injured, dealing with some injury status last season, according to The Athletic. Wolfe confirmed that Sasaki, who only pitched 111 innings this season, dealt with shoulder inflammation and soreness while he dealt with an oblique injury last season. So that's maybe something to keep in mind. I don't think that's really going to impact things in terms of his signing. The dude is just 23 years old. So again, very unique situation for a guy to be a free agent at that age and have the kind of pedigree that he comes with as well, with his performance over there in Japan. Started as a professional over there at age 19, and now he's just finished up his age 22 season, just turned 23 in November. Some of his numbers had a 2.35 ERA last season. Back in 23, a 1.78 ERA. Has only ever thrown 129 innings in a given season, so it's kind of interesting that The Athletic put that in there about his injury situation because it's not like 111 innings was a major outlier in terms of his professional numbers. 83 innings in 2021. 2022, he threw a career high 129 innings, and that was with a 2.02 ERA. And then 91 innings, and then this past season, 111. And I wonder if even with 2023, those numbers are just with his Nippon Professional Baseball League team. I don't think that counts anything from the World Baseball Classic, so that probably would be a reason that gets him up closer to 100 or beyond in terms of his numbers innings-wise in 2023, because I think that was the WBC year. Yeah. Cardinals had everybody leave, and Wilson was his first year. Yeah. So there you have it. I mean, he's been over 100 innings, give or take, each of the last 3 seasons. I don't think the injury stuff is going to matter at all. Strikeout-wise, he's been pretty consistently more than a strikeout per inning. 135 Ks in that 2023 season where he threw just 91 innings, but had 135 strikeouts. So he's 524 Ks in 414 innings, career 2.02 ERA over in Japan. So, yeah, the dude at 23 years old probably still getting even better. Remember, he threw triple digits, I'm pretty sure, back in the World Baseball Classic, has just an electric arm. So, a lot of intrigue. Could the Cardinals be in play for a guy like this? Like, honestly, I think they'll try. I think they'll have a meeting. Like, if there will be a meeting scheduled, I think the Cardinals would do their due diligence to try and make a pitch because, again, this isn't somebody that'll cost you money. So, if it's just the international spending budget, what can you make the case for if you're the St. Louis Cardinals of why a player should sign with you? And it's not about the money. The Cardinals should absolutely be throwing their hat in the ring. I don't know how the agency similarities with Joel Wolfe representing Sasaki as well as Nolan Arenado. Maybe the Cardinals need to make sure they give a nice soft landing spot to Arenado. He's completely happy. His agent's completely happy. And then thereafter, they'll be able to target Sasaki and say, hey, we did you solid with your guy. And now maybe you want to help us out and get Sasaki to St. Louis. I have no idea how realistic it is. I would say probably the Cardinals is not a very realistic destination. But like I said, if they were going to make a play for this, I bet they'd be doing it in silence. They'd be doing it covert. They'd be trying to keep it on the low. I think there are some interesting aspects of this. If not wanting a major media market, maybe something more low-key. I do think weather probably usually comes into play, and that's going to work against St. Louis for sure. So if I had to guess, it'll probably still be something like the Padres. But let me know your thoughts, Cardinals fans, hearing everything from Joel Wolfe on Tuesday, whether you're maybe hoping Roki Sasaki will come to St. Louis. How likely is it? Maybe not still particularly likely. However, the fact that it's not going to take all the money in the world, that's the thing that I think I keep clinging to, and maybe Cardinals fans will cling to as well. So we'll see what ends up happening. Where do you predict Sasaki will go? And how do you believe this Arenado saga will conclude for the Cardinals? That's still going to be the main topic of conversation until it happens, which could come at any time. But until the Arenado trade comes to fruition, I feel like that's going to be the domino that falls first before everything else in the Cardinals offseason can take place. So if you guys are still interested in Cardinals coverage throughout the winter, this is the place to be. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel or following b-schaeff daily on Spotify. And thanks again to our great presenting partners on the show this week, Revival LLC and Smith Agri-Service, for supporting the show. Make sure you guys check out the video description for the links to support those fine businesses. Thank you guys so much for listening as always, and we'll talk to you next time on b-schaeff Daily. Peace.